What's up, team? Sean from Invest to Live here. And man, oh man, did we get a pop out of Uber on earnings today? I'm not going to waste any time, but what I want to do is ask the question, what happened? And why is the stock up about 15% right now? It was up 13% in pre-market and up about 15% right now as the market's really getting to the day here. So let's talk really briefly on the highlights, what happened here. And then also, I had made a video just the other day, I'll link it below, calling out some of these things as well. Excuse me. So let's jump into it, right? The headlines were not really that great, right? Like on first pass, Uber reported another huge and significant loss. However, they beat on revenue. And that's really what's causing a big push here, as well as the fact that they're cash flow positive, which was somewhat of a surprise, I think, for a lot of people following the stock. So here's what we know. Uber did report a net loss of 2.6 billion for the second quarter. However, and this is an important caveat, 1.7 of the 2.6 was directly attributed to investments and a revaluation of stocks in other companies. Those companies were Zomato, Grab, Aurora. These are overseas Uber Eats peers. I don't want to call them competitors since they have stakes in them. Now, the good news is, although they did have this serious loss, they did beat on revenue estimates. And per the CEO, Dara, he said, and I'm reading here, Uber continues to benefit from an increase on-demand transportation and a shift in spending from retail to service. Actually, pretty interesting stuff here. So here's what we know, right? They beat the analyst estimates for revenue and posted 382 million in free cash flow for the first time ever. So this is one of the big drivers of these share prices. The revenue was at 8.07 billion against an estimated 7.39 billion. This is a pretty big deal and pretty significant as well. Now, the other piece is the company had reported adjusted EBITDA of 364 million, which was far better than the range we expected, which was somewhere in the 240 to 270 range. Gross bookings were up 33% to 29.1 billion. And they were in line with the forecast of 28.5 to 29.5. So again, we were beating in lots of places or otherwise within a realm of what we expected. This is great here. Now, the two largest pieces of Uber really are in and around mobility and delivery, right? Think I'm calling an Uber to take me somewhere and I'm using Uber Eats or a service provider to bring me something I bought. So we're going to talk about gross bookings for just a quick second here. So in the second quarter of 2022, mobility was at 13.4 billion, but you ready for this? Up 57% from a year ago. And delivery, again, gross bookings was at 13.9 billion, up 12% from a year ago. But think about what I just said there for a second. Delivery has outpaced mobility. That's really interesting because that opens up a much bigger market and potentially even more of a TAM for them to jump into. Now, of course, we know that one of the big pieces of this was the Uber Eats business. During the pandemic, that was huge for them, but this trend is really continuing. And this is what's getting people excited. And I think what's driving a lot of this as well. Now, additionally, we had a direct quote from Uber here. Driver engagement reached another post-pandemic high in Q2, and we saw an acceleration in both active and new driver growth in the quarter. So when you look at all of these things sort of independently, what you're hearing is a couple of really important features. Number one, things are going well, business is expanding. They had great cash flow. They're beating estimates of where people think they should be. And this huge loss was largely attributed to a revaluation of what they own today from a private stake perspective and from investment write-downs. What that means is once those are done, they shouldn't or typically shouldn't come back onto those books again. So something to call out there as well. So that's it. I don't want to spend a whole ton of time on this. I just want to call it out that, we had talked about this the other day in another video around what analysts were expecting to hear and what they thought the upside would be. We've already seen a 15% pop today. This is not indicative of this being the next best thing or a great solution or any of these other topics. But what I do want to call out is when you're evaluating companies like an Uber, it's important to know in the weeds how they're growing, what divisions are growing, what sectors are growing, and how they compare on year-over-year periods. We had a lot of good positive things here as well as free cash flow. So with that, I hope you have a great day. It's not a long video today. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, good luck out there. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.